I want the movement to come back and to be pain-free. There is nothing more frustrating than being limited by pain, especially when it affects something as basic and essential as the movement of your shoulder. I never realized how important my shoulder was until I began having issues with it. It affected my daily life in so many unexpected ways, from lifting objects, reaching for something on a shelf, to simply getting dressed in the morning. The discomfort started small, but over time it grew, and with it, my frustration and worry also increased. At first, I ignored the pain. Like many people, I thought it would go away on its own. It's just a strain, I told myself. I probably slept on it wrong. But days turned into weeks, and the dull ache turned into a sharp pain whenever I moved my arm a certain way. It wasn't long before I realized this wasn't something that would go away easily. I started to lose range of motion. Simple movements like combing my hair or putting on a backpack became challenging. The shoulder that had always moved so freely was now stiff, painful, and unreliable. What I wanted more than anything was for the movement to come back. I wanted to feel free again, to stretch my arm, rotate it, lift it, without that awful pinch or burning sensation. I missed the ease with which I used to perform basic tasks. I missed not having to think before moving. Pain has a way of making you overly aware of your body, and not in a good way. Every movement becomes cautious, hesitant, and sometimes even fearful. It was then that I decided to take action. I sought medical advice and was told that I had a condition that could be treated but would take time. Whether it was tendinitis, a rotator cuff injury, or frozen shoulder, the process of healing would involve patience, rest, and rehabilitation. The good news was that with the right care, the movement could return, and I could become pain-free again. That became my goal: full range of motion without pain. Physical therapy became a part of my life. At first, the exercises were small and simple, but they felt huge to me. Just lifting my arm a few inches felt like a battle. The pain was still there, but I reminded myself that this was part of the process. My therapist encouraged me with every small improvement. "You're getting there," they said. And I held on to those words. Every stretch, every repetition, every ice pack applied after a tough session. It was all part of the journey to recovery. Through the process, I learned so much about patience and persistence. Healing isn't always fast. It isn't always obvious. Sometimes progress feels invisible. But then, one day, I realized I could lift my arm higher than before. I could reach behind me with less pain. Little victories like that gave me hope. And slowly, the pain began to fade. It didn't disappear overnight, but it lessened, and in its place came strength and flexibility. What surprised me most was how much I learned about myself during this time. I learned to listen to my body, not just to the pain, but to the signs it gives before something becomes serious. I learned to appreciate movement, something I had always taken for granted. When you lose something so basic, you realize how important it is. I also learned that recovery isn't just physical, it's emotional too. Pain wears on your mental strength. It makes you feel vulnerable. But overcoming it makes you stronger, not just in your shoulder, but in your mind and spirit. I still remember the first time I lifted my arm above my head again without any pain. It was such a small movement, but to me, it felt like flying. That freedom, that ease, it was everything I had hoped for. And now, every time I stretch, lift, or reach without discomfort, I remember that moment. It reminds me that healing is possible, that with time, care, and effort, we can get back what we lost. So yes, I want the movement to come back. I want to be pain-free. And I know now that it's not just a wish. It's a goal that can be reached. Because I've felt the progress. I've seen the change. And I believe in the strength of the human body and spirit to recover, adapt, and thrive. As I continued my journey toward healing, I began to understand that the process was not only physical, it was deeply emotional as well. Pain has a way of creeping into every corner of your life, not just your shoulder. It affects your sleep, your mood, your relationships, and even your motivation to do the things you once loved. There were moments when I felt defeated, moments when I doubted whether I would ever be completely pain-free again. But I refused to give up. I kept reminding myself of my goal. I want the movement to come back, and I want to be pain-free. That sentence became a sort of mantra for me. Every time I wanted to skip a therapy session, every time I felt tired of stretching or using resistance bands, I whispered that line to myself. It grounded me. It reminded me that the effort I was putting in was for something meaningful. I began to track my progress in a journal. Each day, I wrote a few lines about how I felt, what movements I could do, what hurt, what didn't. Some days the entries were short and full of frustration. Still stiff today. Pain worse than yesterday. But there were also hopeful entries. Lifted a water bottle without pain. Slept through the night. Over time, I could flip back through the pages and actually see how far I had come. That gave me strength on the tough days. Sleep, too, was a challenge during this time. Lying on my side became nearly impossible, and I often found myself waking up in the middle of the night, adjusting my position, trying to find relief. I learned how important sleep is for healing, and I began to adjust my bedtime routine. I used pillows to support my shoulder, practiced breathing techniques to relax my muscles, and avoided screens before bed. These small changes made a big difference, not just in my sleep, but in my overall recovery. Nutrition also became something I paid more attention to. I learned that certain foods can support healing, things rich in protein, omega-3 fatty acids, and antioxidants. I added more leafy greens, fruits, nuts, and lean meats to my diet. I started drinking more water. It wasn't a magical fix, but I could feel the improvement in my energy and overall well-being. One thing I didn't expect during my recovery was how lonely it could feel. People around me didn't always understand what I was going through. Because shoulder pain isn't always visible, others assumed I was fine. They didn't see the way I struggled to carry a bag or how I winced just trying to stretch my arm. Sometimes I felt isolated in my pain, but I learned to speak up. I explained to friends and family what I was experiencing, and their support made a big difference. Just having someone ask, "How's your shoulder today?" made me feel seen and cared for. I also found online communities of people going through similar issues. Reading their stories gave me perspective and hope. I learned new stretches and tips from others who were also on the road to recovery. In those shared experiences, I didn't feel so alone anymore. It reminded me that healing is something many of us go through, and that we can get through it together. One major turning point in my recovery came when I was able to return to some of my favorite activities. I love walking and light exercise, and being active has always been a part of who I am. When my shoulder pain was at its worst, I had to stop everything. But as my strength returned, I slowly started incorporating movement again. Walking became easier. I could do light yoga, avoiding the poses that strained my shoulder. I felt like I was getting a part of my identity back. Eventually, I was even able to carry groceries, reach overhead, and do things without thinking about my shoulder at all. That was a huge win. I knew then that my goal was being realized. The movement was coming back. And yes, I was beginning to feel pain-free. Not every day was perfect. There were still occasional twinges or moments of soreness, but I had come so far from where I started. Reflecting now, I think this journey taught me some powerful life lessons. First, that healing takes time, and that's okay. In a world that moves fast and values instant results, it can be hard to accept that some things can't be rushed. Our bodies need time to repair. Patience is not weakness, it's strength. Second, I learned the value of listening to my body. Before, I would often ignore small signs of discomfort, pushing through the pain until it became unbearable. Now, I respect those signals. I rest when I need to, stretch when I feel tight, and warm up before any physical activity. Prevention is key. Third, I gained a deep appreciation for the gift of movement. It's something so many of us take for granted until it's gone. The ability to move freely, to reach, to lift, to play, to work. These are everyday miracles. I don't want to forget that ever again. Every pain-free movement is a blessing, and I now celebrate those moments. Finally, I learned that setbacks don't define us. There were days when it felt like I was moving backwards, but those moments didn't erase my progress. I just had to keep going. Healing isn't a straight line. There are ups and downs, but the key is to keep moving forward, even slowly. Now, as I move into the future, I carry these lessons with me. I know that pain may come again. It's a part of life. But I also know that I have the strength to face it. I've done it once, and I can do it again. I know how to care for my body, how to ask for help, how to stay consistent and focused on what matters. To anyone else dealing with shoulder issues or any kind of physical limitation, know this: you're not alone. Your journey might be hard, but it's not impossible. The body is resilient. It wants to heal. Trust the process. Stay committed, and don't lose hope. I wanted the movement to come back and to be pain-free. And now, after months of effort, care, and growth, I can finally say, I'm almost there. And that feels like one of the greatest victories of my life. Recovering from my shoulder issue wasn't just about getting stronger physically. It was also about building mental resilience. There were times when I wanted to quit. Times when I questioned whether I would ever move my arm the way I used to. But in those moments of doubt, I realized something important. Healing doesn't happen only in muscles and joints. It happens in the mind, too. Every small victory helped rebuild my confidence. At first, I couldn't even reach the top shelf in the kitchen without wincing. But one day, I reached up for a glass and realized there was no pain. It felt like such a simple movement, but to me, it was everything. I laughed out loud, not because the action was funny, but because I felt a pure, unexpected joy. That's when I knew I was making real progress, not just in my shoulder, but in my spirit. Pain has a strange way of teaching you things. It teaches you to slow down, to be present. When your body hurts, you notice every detail. You learn to respect the way your muscles stretch, the way your bones move, the way your joints support you. Before my injury, I rarely thought about my shoulder. I used it every day, constantly, without a second thought. But when it stopped working properly, I realized just how amazing and complex the human body really is. During my recovery, I started reading about anatomy and movement. I wanted to understand what was happening inside my shoulder, why certain stretches helped, what muscles were affected, and how everything was connected. I learned about the rotator cuff, about inflammation, about how even small injuries could impact larger systems in the body. That knowledge gave me a sense of control. I wasn't just waiting to get better. I was actively learning how to support my healing. I also began to practice mindfulness and meditation. I know that might sound unrelated to physical pain, but it helped me manage the frustration and anxiety that came with my shoulder issues. When I felt stressed, the pain seemed worse. When I was calm, I noticed that my body relaxed, and so did my shoulder. That mind-body connection became a powerful tool for me. Sometimes, just taking 5 minutes to breathe deeply and focus on the present moment made all the difference. I found gratitude in unexpected places. For example, I became grateful for my other arm, the one that had to do extra work while my shoulder was healing. I appreciated my legs, my back, my hands, all the parts of me that kept going even when one part couldn't. And I became especially grateful for the people around me. The friends who helped carry things when I couldn't. The family members who asked how I was feeling, who supported me even when I was irritable from pain or frustration. Gratitude became a daily practice. Each night, before bed, I wrote down 3 things I was thankful for. Some nights, it was less pain today, or good progress at therapy. Other nights, it was as simple as a warm meal or a hug from a friend. This practice helped me shift my focus from what I had lost to what I still had, and that shift made a huge difference in my emotional recovery. As I got stronger, I started setting goals. First, I wanted to lift a light weight without pain. Then, I wanted to return to certain exercises. Eventually, I even challenged myself to try push-ups again, something I thought I might never do. I worked slowly, carefully, and always listened to my body. And when I finally completed a set of push-ups without discomfort, I felt a sense of pride that was hard to describe. It wasn't about the exercise itself. It was about proving to myself that healing is possible, that my effort was paying off. This journey changed how I define strength. Before, I thought strength was about lifting heavy weights, doing intense workouts, or powering through challenges. But now, I understand that real strength is about patience, consistency, and the courage to keep going when things are tough. Strength is waking up every day and doing your best, even when progress is slow. Strength is saying, I believe I will get better, even when the pain is still there. My shoulder injury also taught me compassion, for myself and for others. I used to be impatient when people talked about physical pain or chronic injuries. I didn't understand what it was like to live with daily discomfort, or how much energy it takes to keep pushing forward. But now I do. And that understanding has made me more empathetic, more willing to listen, more supportive of others who are going through similar struggles. In many ways, the pain forced me to grow. I became more mindful, more grateful, more aware of my body and mind. I learned to take care of myself, not just when I'm injured, but every day. I now prioritize rest and recovery. I stretch regularly, and I no longer ignore signs from my body. I've made self-care a habit, not an afterthought. Looking back, I see the whole experience, the pain, the frustration, the small victories, and the lessons, as a turning point in my life. It was difficult, yes, but it was also transformative. I now move with more intention. I appreciate freedom of movement. I no longer take simple things, like reaching, lifting, or sleeping comfortably, for granted. My shoulder is not just better now, it's stronger, more flexible, and more resilient. And so am I. If there's one message I want to share with anyone facing a similar situation, it's this: don't give up on yourself. Healing is rarely quick or easy. It takes time. But you are not broken. You are rebuilding. You are becoming stronger in ways you can't even see yet. Keep showing up. Keep doing the exercises. Keep resting when you need to. And keep believing that one day the movement will return and the pain will fade. You'll reach up for something without thinking. You'll lift something without hesitation. You'll wake up one day and realize, I did it. I'm okay. I'm free. And that feeling? That feeling is worth every hard day, every setback, every ounce of effort. This journey isn't just about healing a shoulder. It's about rediscovering yourself. It's about learning what you're capable of. And it's about knowing, deep down, that no matter what life throws your way, you have the strength to get through it. And now, every time I move without pain, every time I stretch my arm with ease, I don't just feel relief. I feel proud. Because I earned this. I fought for this. And I will never take it for granted again.